Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 16, What's Emerging for the Collective Consciousness of Men? Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. We are talking about one of my most favorite things. It is men. As I mentioned before, working with men makes me so happy. It lights up my heart so big, and I get so much information about the trajectory of the divine masculine, the collective masculine, the woundings, how to help men in the here and now, going through all of that. Um, and I rarely get the opportunity to really share this information, so I'm excited to put it together here today. So, before I get started, I want to first address the PC ness of gender and biological sex. In shamanic work, these things are not black and white in any way, shape, or form. They are not linear. I can talk about gender and I can talk about biological sex in 15 different perspectives and dimensions, if not more. And so I'll ask you not to get caught up in that for today. Take this information however it lands for you. Try not to put it into any boxes. And yeah, I just want to say that up front. And so today we're talking about the collective consciousness piece with regard to men, masculinity, trajectory, spiritual history, and that sort of thing. I hope to provide some information and insights on a couple different levels, and hopefully it will land with the people that need to hear it. So, the information that I'm going to share today is both based in my work with clients and my insights from the spirit world. I have worked with thousands of men over the last decade. And again, this is one perspective. It may not resonate with everyone. So, in this podcast, I'm going to go over a big high level picture. I'll go over what I'm seeing in the shadow collective of men, and we'll talk about some themes and patterns that emerge in the masculine at this time, as well as potential healing points that need to be looked at or addressed. So, the first thing I want to say is that the paradigm of our 3D reality is changing. That means everything from how thin the veil is to how matter works to time and space. Time is getting wonky for many of us. I'm sure some of you have noticed. The consistency of our dimension is changing, and that also means that people are changing, patterns, collective boxes, and paradigms are also shifting. And this is important to know because in our culture, especially, but I think pretty much everywhere, we have trouble with death. We cling to the past, we cling to what we've been exposed to and what we know, and we don't really give people, places, and things the opportunity to die because we're too busy hanging on to what we think of them as. And this is applicable to this conversation. So, the way that we think of men and how they operate and what they need and how they behave is actually outdated in most cases. Of course, there is still a large population of people living in the past actively, and so it may not apply there, but I'm speaking to those of us who are on a path of forward motion with the dimensionality of our planet. Hopefully, that makes a little bit of sense. So, with regard to that, and how it is involved in the masculine conversation is a lot of us are still hanging on to what men did to us in the past, either collectively as women or as children. And it may be personal, it may not be personal. We also still hang on to beliefs around how men operate. Like I read a book a couple months ago. It was like what men want women to know or something along those lines. There's one for men and there's one for women. And I think it is like Christian based, but I read the book and 90% of it felt irrelevant at this point in time. I think it was maybe written like 20, 25 years ago. and it was talking about what men want and their perspective on things. And as that information was flowing through my body, I could see that the majority of it no longer applied. And that's really important thing to note when we're having the shamanic conversation, because we need to be addressing the world and interpreting the world by what's happening right now, not by what was happening, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that's part of the kind of shamanism that I teach and preach, if you will, is being connected to the right now as things stand. This does involve letting go of the past, which means we have to let go of parts of ourselves. We have to let belief systems die. We have to let old versions die. We have to let victims die within us. And that's a really hard thing to do. So it's good to have these things in the back of your head so that if they come up, you know that you can address them. The next thing I want to go over is the collective level view of masculinity at this point. So, collective level is my job. I don't know if all shamans are like this, but I know that for me, the majority of what I work with in all spaces of my being is collective level. So I see, you know, what the majority of the collective is going through, what the majority of the collective needs, what's happening in the collective consciousness of the military or of England or whatever else it is that I choose to dip my toes into. So, right now, I'm going to tell you about the collective consciousness of men and their trajectory from a spiritual standpoint. This may be difficult to hear for some people, and it may make so much sense for other people. So, men collectively signed up to ravage the feminine. This is so the feminine could find her way back into power. So, if you look at the last few decades, longer even still, women have not been in a place of power. They've been exploited. They've been taken advantage of. They haven't had the same rights as men. There's generation upon generation of like childhood rape with both male and female, but primarily women. It's a whole thing. We all see it. It was what caused the rise in feminism. And men signed up to do that. They signed up for literally the worst possible job, and that is to be predatory or violate another human. But like all trauma, there was a bigger picture thing happening. So by having that power taken away from us, by going through that violation, it allowed us to claw our way back up and find that power within ourselves to become empowered. Now, most women have actually gotten stuck in this process because they stop at the point where they hate men and they never move past it into true forgiveness. And you can see and hear that all around us in TV, in radio, in personalities, looking at relationships. But this is the big level picture. People come onto this planet agreeing to do things for the ultimate greater good, even though their job to do it sucks. So I'm speaking to the perpetrator energy. Those people came in knowing that they were going to do that to someone else, whether that's emotionally, physically, anywhere on the spectrum of violation. You are providing the medicine that nobody wants to see, feel, or be provided with. You are the enemy. And I see men as the ones who agreed to do that for the greater trajectory of Earth, for the greater trajectory of mankind. Now, as you could imagine, doing this on a soul level, on a collective level, will ignite so much guilt and shame for men on a deep level that they probably do not even understand, because they're not just carrying it for themselves, they're carrying it for all men. And some of them may know that it's related and some of them may not, but this is what I see on like a large scale spiritual level. So when we're stuck in this kind of guilt and shame, it prevents us from moving forward, from healing, from stepping into our own power. And if we can't see it and it's in the shadow, it just keeps growing and growing and growing until we can find a way to look at it. And the way to address this is that men must forgive themselves and women must forgive them too. And probably the harder part of that equation is that men now need to allow themselves to be feminine, which is the ultimate risk because they have just demonstrated what happens to the feminine for being feminine. And it's that she gets knocked down, she gets violated, she gets perpetrated on all the levels. Now, I see this as being the key to heal the awakened man, or the key to heal the man who should be awakened, who can embody the divine masculine. But this is the shadow piece of it, guys. You can't heal something that you can't see. And I don't know how many people are consciously aware of this level healing that needs to take place. But I've seen it very clearly for years and have been really afraid to kind of come forward with it and start talking about it. So, how do we heal this? It's through forgiveness and it's through love. So, a lot of women have not forgiven men as a collective, as individuals. There's a lot of like hate and resentment and, women power, and we're not able to forgive them. And men are not able to forgive themselves. And we're going to talk about some other reasons why they can't forgive themselves in like regular day-to-day scenarios, but I'm talking about a bigger, higher level picture here. So the way forward to healing this is through forgiveness, it's through love, it's through believing in men, believing in who they are and what they came here to do, and the freaking power that they have. Because do you know what kind of power it takes to carry out that mission? Imagine it, right? So we think of those things that happened as being bad or negative. Really, nothing is bad or negative, because when you zoom out, again, nothing is real. Whatever happens here on Earth is kind of bullshit anyway. If we're looking at the bigger picture and like what they triggered by agreeing to be in the role that they're actually amazing. Men are freaking amazing. And so believing in them and trusting them and respecting them and kind of bringing them back into the fold is key. Being open to their emotions, being open to their feminine is also key. And that's the whole piece inside us as women that many of us need to work way more deeply on, is the inner masculine and feminine, the way that we treat ourselves. And it's always reflected internally and externally with the way that we believe men to be or other women to be. Yeah, it's it's a very interesting thing to consider, right? It's hard to put into words. It's hard to put into words what I'm seeing and feeling right now, but I'm trying. Now, you need someone to believe in you while also not wanting anything from you. So, a lot of things that we hear women saying are like, we just want to be loved and appreciated without being expected to do all the duties, to be the mother and the wife and the sex slave and all the things. We just want to be loved and appreciated. The same goes for men. What happens if we just loved and appreciated and respected them and did not expect them to provide for us, to protect us, to give us something that we need? I think it's a very hypocritical place. I see a lot is women are demanding these things because they feel that they are owed to them, but men actually need the same thing. And personally, I believe that one of a man's greatest superpowers is love. I think they're actually capable of love on a level that women might not even understand, both in giving it, but also receiving it. And that love I have touched in several men, and it is so completely profound. I, I, I don't have words. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think that that is one of the greatest gifts that men have for our collective, is the ability to love. But they don't have the safe place to explore that. They don't have the safe place to experience that. Most women are not open to receiving that. And so how do we welcome and embrace a heart-led man? How do we cultivate a heart-led man under these circumstances? You get what I'm saying? I see many potential trajectories of Earth and of people's futures when I work with them, when I hold ceremony. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that it would only take a handful of genuinely heart-led men to change the world. They are masters of the 3D paradigm. They can create and spread anything that they want to do. And if they have full heart power behind it, they would change the freaking world. And I love them for that. I have so much respect for men. I wish I had more in my life. I can't wait to have a partner. But helping them get to this place, I feel like is one of my missions. I I just love it. And I see it so clearly. So if I can see you and your potential so clearly, if I can be your cheerleader and not want anything from you, that's the ultimate support in that space, you know? So next I want to talk about themes that are coming up around the masculine embodied men embodied masculine. I don't know. We're just going to say men because I don't really like the whole masculine feminine thing for this conversation. So, what am I seeing in the shadows? Shadow work is my jam. I see a lot of stuff in the shadows. Let's talk about them. Spiritually gifted men. Woo! This is a terrifying experience for me so far. I have worked with many men who are quote unquote on the spiritual path. Um, Granted, most of them have been men who plan to serve ayahuasca or mushrooms, um, which is not the same as a spiritual path. I just want to be clear and say that that is not shamanism, and shamanism is not that. Sometimes they intersect, but usually not. So when I work with men who are on a spiritual path, 99% of the time, they are on a trajectory to do major damage. I'm sorry. I have a puppy who's trying to play with me right now. Um, they are out there to do major damage. They're going to cause the same kind of soul level trauma that have been caused to women over the last several decades because they have not done the healing around that. There is an incredible amount of ego and inability to have a truly open heart. So, in order for a man to have an open heart, it requires him to be fully seen, fully vulnerable, super emotional, which is very feminine, and most are unwilling because in such a big part of them, that is still, they understand and they know that that is still not a safe thing to be because they haven't healed that wound within themselves. The other thing that I have noticed is that most men who are quote unquote spiritual are very good at acting. They tend to fall into a spectrum of the narcissist category that is unparalleled because they're typically extremely gifted, which means all of their gifts are funneled into the narcissism, which makes them super narcissists. So their facade is spot on. You can almost never tell that you're being cut down from the shadows until you can, which will be 10 or 20 years down the road. So in the spiritual space, a lot of times this looks like being ravaged in the feminine realm of things. So forcing you to question your intuition, your inner knowing, subtly being cut down, subtly being ravaged. Again, it's because there is that part of them in the shadow that has not yet reconciled the whole masculine ravaging the feminine. And so that's what they churn out in their work with other people. Now, don't get me wrong, not all spiritually gifted led men are like this. I have met my share of wonderful men, most of which are in my preferred practitioners list. But this, again, is like 99% of the time. This is what I see. The next theme that I see quite a bit is the running away, the freedom piece. So for men, freedom is really important, but it's usually directed like in a toxic way. And this is the woman's version of let's go build a compound in the woods and live out there together. And that is men who generally want to build businesses so they don't have to engage with the world. They just want to make money and do whatever they want. And it's usually not in a healthy way. Lots of indulging, lots of sex, lots of um, kind of running away from the realness that is life. Sometimes it's leaving the country. Sometimes it's other ways of escapism, but that is the same thing that women encounter when we're like, okay, we're just done. We're done with society. Men do it the same way, just in a different flavor. And it's because they're existentially exhausted too. Too much has been put on them without letting them rest, without letting them be in touch with their emotions. They're done, just like women have been for decades. And I can tell you it's going to get worse. The next theme that I see quite a bit is extreme relationship problems. Because relationships are amazing, and men will always reflect a woman's inner patriarchy, basically. So when you're in a relationship, the man will always reflect what you really are and what you really see and what you really feel within yourself. And so it does cause a lot of relationship problems. And I think we're really quick to say that the men are the issue, but honestly, they're not. Actually, it's the woman who's the issue, and the men are just reflecting it. And for anyone that doesn't land with, what I would say is, if you're in a relationship and you're unhappy with your person and you think that he's the problem, why haven't you left the relationship? Because the reason we stay is what we need to be looking at, because that's what he's reflecting. So there are many themes, of course, that come up with the masculine. These are kind of the most common that I see and work with on a regular basis. But everybody's different and every situation's different. There are some other things that I see that need to be healed as a result of everything that I am describing here. And the first is the damage that's been done through the exploitation of men by exploiting their sex drive, their desire for women, their desire for war and fighting, and stability that the military offers, general patriarchy stuff, right? So just like the damage that was done to women for being exploited, that women have needed to heal from, men have also been exploited, and they need to heal from the same things. So going back to my belief, my feeling that men just want to love, that is literally what they're freaking built for. And they love women, most of them naturally love women. They are devoted to, they just want to worship, they just want to enjoy. Yeah, it's super easy to exploit that. Look at pornography and look at the media and the way that women dress and the clothing that's out there, and like the way that we advertise. It's insane. And it's a total exploitation of this natural drive that men have, but they have no healthy way to express this. Again, going back to how women don't allow themselves to receive, and this is a whole other topic, the whole women issue. But if women are not allowing themselves to receive men, to receive love in this deep way that men want to give it, they need another outlet for it. And that's been exploited. And I think the war and the strength thing and the military is an exploitation of an old paradigm. I actually don't believe that that's needed anymore, but it's so deeply ingrained that it makes it an easy pathway for men to fall into. And then, of course, they spend the rest of their life recovering from it, right? Because the level of trauma is incredible. So, in all of this damage that I've described, we have come down to a point where women hate men. They hate men. And it results in ridiculous mother wounds for most men that they are trying to heal constantly through their relationships and through other relatively unhealthy means. Because if a woman at her deepest level doesn't like men because, she has her reasons, we've been through some stuff, she's not going to love a little boy the way that he deserves to be loved. If a father hates himself deep down, that's going to reflect in the way he parents a little boy. So there's a ton of wounding that happens with men when they're young. And then we have the whole societal thing. Men can't show their feelings. They must be this, they must be that. In relationships, we end up with mother-son dynamics a lot. That's super gross and toxic and really keeps us all stuck. Most men hate themselves. They hate themselves on such a deep level that it makes me want to cry. Every time I see it, every time I feel it. They have a pressure to perform. that I can't imagine carrying around. I imagine it's actually kind of like the pressure to be pretty or the pressure to be skinny. Now imagine having that for perform or competition for survival. Um, as women, we know what that feels like. It's a different thing, but it's the same pressure. And men need support with that, and they need to heal with that. There is so much sleeping around that happens with men who are just seeking intimacy and connection because that is the only way that they know how or that's culturally acceptable, which really just causes them to further hate themselves. So, what are we feeding by having that be a thing? I recently had an experience with Tinder that was so completely mortifying. Um, and I cannot believe how much just seeking sex is out there, just seeking connection. And it's not even like the good, consenting, like mutual depth kind. It's like, no, I just need somebody tonight because I don't want to be alone. That's freaking sad. It's so sad. And then as a result of all of this, because men are so freaking powerful and they're so good at building things, they have so many walls around them and around their heart that it takes magic and medicine to enter that space, to take down the walls, to even begin to expose their heart. And that's a huge problem. So what can we do? What can we do about this? You know what? First, I'm going to talk about what I don't recommend doing. Do not recommend a kick your ass method. Please, please shelf this idea that it needs to be hard and rough and a struggle, and if it doesn't hurt, it's not worth it. That's bullshit. That is how we re-traumatize ourselves. That is how we re-traumatize our inner child. And anytime part of you is like, yeah, I'm gonna go drink ayahuasca and get my ass kicked, I want you to think about your inner 1-year-old right now and if you would kick his ass. Because if you would, you have bigger problems. So anytime you want to do something for healing and you notice that you're going into that space of like harder is better, I want you to think about a child. Because harder is not better. Harder is how we make things worse. It's how we put up more walls. It's how we make our shadow bigger. Because if you go in there and you have a 1-year-old who just needs to be held and loved, and you want to go kick some ass, I can tell you right now, you're going to spend a lifetime trying to get that 1-year-old back, trying to prove that the world and you are safe enough for him to return. So anything that is harsh, anything that hurts, anything that does not feel collaborative, loving, nurturing, I'm going to tell you right now, that's what men need, is the loving, nurturing feminine energy. That is the pathway to healing. It is not the kick your ass methods. We are done with that, guys. Let it go. And the other thing that I would not recommend is this like men only exclusive energy like this. Maybe it's not in your face macho, but there is some macho-ness about it. This like overly warrior energy. I don't think that's helping anybody either, honestly. I think that collectively what's being asked to call in is nurturing, it is love, it's reception, it's collaboration, it's seeing without expecting anything, it's unconditional softness, unconditional love. That's what I think men need. That's what I see men need. Damn it, I don't just think it. This is what I see. And I know that that's a hard thing to see, to hear, and a hard thing to swallow. And it goes against what we know, what we think we know. But I'm telling you right now, guys, it's what we need. It's what men need. And so, what else can we do? What can we do about all this stuff I've been talking about? Heart led men need to be starting groups to help other men. And I will tell you that the men who are heart led are so much more humble than anybody expects them to be. And I don't say that in like a martyr, like, oh, you have to be humble. No, no, no. I'm saying they're going to be unsure of themselves. They're not going to be overly confident. They'll be like, I don't know how to start a men's group. I don't know what I'm doing, but I feel like men need help. You are the ones who need to start the men's group. It's you. Period. Find a mentor. Whether it's a man or a woman, I don't care. Find somebody who can help lead you to your heart. That is the key. You need to be led to your heart, and you need to identify what keeps you from going in that direction. You need a mentor. You need somebody to help you. Work with someone who genuinely loves men, and you will know it and feel it when you see it, guys. They need to have done a lot of work on their own inner relationships with the masculine, on their mother wounds, father wounds, the collective masculine and feminine. They need to be doing their own work, and you have to feel nothing but love. It does not mean that it won't be challenging. Does not mean that it won't have moments of like, I fucking hate this, but you will feel the love, and that is important. And most importantly, guys, you have to use your intuition. After listening to all the things that I have laid out here and all the things that come up inside you, your intuition is what's going to lead you best moving forward. You can discard everything I say as long as you do what feels right for you. And that is a feminine piece that I wish more men would definitely tap into, is the intuition. So I will conclude this by saying that in my work, my job is to write the spiritual prescription. And that means I look at what's happening and I identify the next few steps that need to be taken in order to resolve, rebalance, or heal whatever it is that's happening in a person, in a collective, in a dynamic. And in terms of men as a whole, the love piece, the forgiveness piece, the resolution of guilt and shame, being heart-led or learning how to be heart-led is the next piece to the puzzle for the collective divine masculine that's asking to come through. What comes after that, I am certain will make itself clear, but right now, this is what I see. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast today. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.